Leave the car! My mother-in-law screamed as I pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I saw Patricia running after the Porsche in her white sandals, one hand raised as though she could order me to stop. My 3-year-old son, Noah, sat quietly in his car seat behind me, clutching the little red truck he carried everywhere. Patricia believed the Porsche belonged to her son. She believed the house behind her did too. By breakfast the next morning, that illusion would begin to collapse. 20 minutes earlier, our backyard had been full of folding chairs, paper plates, and relatives celebrating my father-in-law, George's retirement. The cookout was being held at our home in Fairfax County, Virginia. I had spent 2 days preparing for it between my civilian job and an Army Reserve training weekend. At first, Patricia's remarks were small enough to ignore. She praised Daniel for giving the family such a beautiful place to gather. Then she told his aunt that my reserve duties were a hobby that kept me away from my responsibilities. When I carried a bowl of potato salad outside, she looked at my dress and asked whether Daniel had paid for that too. A few people lowered their eyes. Nobody challenged her. Daniel stood near the grill, pretending to be busy with the hamburgers. I had been married to him for 5 years. I knew the expression on his face. It meant, "Please, let this pass." For years, I had done exactly that because I mistook silence for peace. Then Patricia crouched beside Noah and smoothed his hair. "One day," she said loudly, "you'll understand that your father is the one who keeps a roof over your head." I set down my glass. "Patricia, please don't undermine me in front of my son." The yard went still. Even Noah looked from her to me. Patricia rose slowly. "After everything this family has done for you, you choose George's retirement party to disrespect me. I asked you not to say something untrue to my child." She pressed a hand to her chest. Daniel finally left the grill, but he did not come to my side. "Claire, apologize to my mother," he said. I stared at him for what? His jaw tightened because his family was watching. "Either apologize to my mother or pack your things and get out of my life." Noah was close enough to hear every word. That decided it. "Fine, I'll go." I lifted Noah into my arms, carried him through the house, and took only his overnight bag from the hall closet. Daniel followed as far as the front porch, but made no attempt to stop us. After Patricia screamed for me to leave the car, I drove 10 minutes to a hotel. Once Noah was settled, I texted Daniel our location and offered a video call. Whatever happened between us, I would not hide his child or use Noah as punishment. Daniel did not answer. At 8 the next morning, my attorney Elena Morales placed a call to my husband, and for the first time, Daniel was about to hear the truth stated without anyone protecting his pride. Elena called me 15 minutes after she hung up with Daniel. "He's angry," she said, "but he listened. That mattered." For most of our marriage, Daniel's anger had ended difficult conversations before they ever reached the truth. This time, someone had required him to hear the facts. Elena had not threatened him or tried to frighten him. She had simply explained that I had retained counsel regarding a temporary separation, preservation of our finances, and a written parenting schedule for Noah. She also told him that neither the house nor the Porsche could be sold, borrowed against, or transferred while ownership records were being reviewed. The truth was, those records had never been complicated. My grandmother Ruth had raised me during the years when my own mother was struggling to stay sober. Her house was not a mansion. It was a comfortable 4-bedroom colonial, built in the 1980s with creaking stairs and a maple tree that dropped leaves faster than anyone could rake them. When Grandma Ruth died, I was 23. She left the mortgage-free house to me along with a small parcel of land outside Richmond. I sold that land 2 years later and used part of the money to buy a certified pre-owned Porsche Cayenne. I chose the Cayenne because it was safe, practical, and large enough for the family I hope to have someday. Both purchases happened before my wedding. The deed and vehicle title were in my name alone, and the funds could be traced to my inheritance. At the time, an estate attorney had advised me to keep those assets separate. I followed that advice carefully, never using our joint account for major improvements or loan payments. Daniel moved into the house after we married. At first, his family's misunderstanding seemed almost innocent. Patricia once complimented him on buying such a lovely home, and Daniel merely smiled. Later, I asked why he had not corrected her. She's proud of me, he said. Why embarrass her over paperwork? I should have insisted on the truth then. Instead, I let the moment pass. I told myself a strong marriage did not need public credit. What I failed to understand was that Daniel was not protecting his mother from embarrassment. He was building an image of himself with things that belonged to me. During Elena's call, Daniel protested that I could not take his son and everything he owned. Elena answered calmly. Claire has not taken Noah out of Fairfax County. She gave you his location and offered contact. As for the property, I suggest you review the deed and vehicle title before describing either asset as yours. She proposed temporary terms that would let Daniel remain in the house while we discussed the separation. She also made clear that he could not grant anyone else permission to move in. Every point from the call would be sent to him in writing. Less than a minute after Elena finished updating me, Daniel's name appeared on my phone. When I answered, he did not ask about Noah. What exactly did you tell your lawyer? He demanded. I told her the truth, I said. Now, I want you to do the same. Daniel went silent for a moment, then his voice hardened. You're turning one bad afternoon into a legal war. No, I said. Your mother humiliated me in front of our son, and you ordered me out. I'm making sure we handle what comes next responsibly. He started to interrupt, but I asked the question that had followed me from the cookout to the hotel. Why does your mother think she has the right to throw me out of my own house? At first, Daniel blamed Patricia. He said she made assumptions, exaggerated everything, and liked telling relatives that her sons were successful. None of that explained why she believed the Porsche was his, or why he had stood there and allowed her to scream at me. Daniel, I said quietly, what did you tell them? His answer came in pieces. Early in our marriage, Patricia had compared him constantly with his older brother Mark, who owned a dental practice in Maryland. Daniel had grown tired of hearing about Mark's income, Mark's vacations, and Mark's new house. So, one Sunday when Patricia praised our home, Daniel told her he had bought it shortly before our wedding. He claimed my name was on the deed for financial reasons. Later, he told his family the Cayenne had been an anniversary gift from him. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, watching Noah stack plastic cups on the carpet. The lie was no longer a misunderstanding I had failed to correct. My husband had used my inheritance to create a version of himself his family would admire. Worse, he had let them treat me like a dependent, because their contempt helped make his story believable. There's more, he admitted. Several months earlier, George and Patricia had begun talking about selling their house after George retired. Daniel had promised them they could move into our downstairs guest suite while they looked for something smaller. You offered them a room in my house without asking me. I thought you'd come around, he said. They're my parents. So, you expected me to accept a decision you had already made. Daniel apologized, but even then he did not fully understand. He said the lies had gotten out of control. He said he had never intended to hurt me. Then he asked whether I could simply apologize to Patricia so everyone could calm down. You still think the problem is that your mother's feelings were hurt, I said. After the call, I asked Elena to help me review our joint finances before I made any decision about the marriage. I expected to find ordinary expenses, perhaps a few purchases Daniel had neglected to mention. That afternoon, the first 16 months of bank records arrived. Near the bottom of the statement were repeated electronic transfers to George and Patricia transfers I had never seen approved or discussed, and together they totaled nearly $12,000. The $12,000 had not disappeared in one dramatic withdrawal. It had left our account quietly. $300 here, $800 there. Over 16 months. Some transfers were labeled home repair, others said car payment, or simply Dad. Daniel had sent the money from our joint savings, an account built from both our paychecks, and intended for emergencies, Noah's future, and repairs to the house. When I confronted him, he did not deny it. My parents were struggling, he said. Dad's retirement took longer than expected, and the roof started leaking. You could have asked me. I knew what you'd say. That sentence hurt almost as much as the transfers. He had not forgotten to tell me. He had decided that my answer did not matter. Daniel insisted his parents believed the money came from his sales bonuses. That did not excuse Patricia's cruelty, but it meant she and George had not knowingly taken money from me. Elena helped me slow down before anger made my decisions for me. I wanted to move every remaining dollar out of the account, but she reminded me that joint funds should be handled carefully during a separation. Instead, I redirected my future salary to a new account in my name, downloaded the statements, activated transaction alerts, and left the existing balance untouched while she reviewed our options. We also sent Daniel a proposed temporary parenting schedule. It gave him regular time with Noah and required both of us to share information about daycare, medical care, and overnight locations. I wanted a record showing that I was protecting our son's routine, not punishing his father. 2 days later, Daniel rented a furnished apartment near Noah's preschool. He returned his house key voluntarily and collected his clothes at an agreed time while Noah was with me at the park. Watching him carry boxes out of the home where we had planned to grow old was painful. Consequences do not stop hurting simply because they are deserved. Patricia reacted differently. She called relatives and said I was using money lawyers and my army connections to destroy her son. One cousin sent me a message asking whether I had really stolen Daniel's house. I typed a reply, deleted it, then placed my phone face down. I could have posted the deed, the title, and every bank transfer online. For one angry minute, I wanted everyone to see exactly who had lied. But public humiliation had helped create this mess. I would not use the same weapon and call it justice. George was the first person in Daniel's family to question the story. He called me that evening sounding older than he had at his retirement party. "Claire," he said, "Patricia says the house is Daniel's. Daniel says it isn't. And now I'm learning the money he gave us came from your joint account." He paused. "I think this family needs to hear the truth from beginning to end. I agreed to one meeting in a neutral place, but I gave him a condition. I won't expose Daniel for him," I said. "If we meet, he tells all of you himself." The meeting took place the following Tuesday in the office of a family counselor George knew through his church. The room was deliberately plain: 4 upholstered chairs, a box of tissues, and no family photographs or familiar walls for anyone to claim as their territory. Patricia arrived carrying a folder and the certainty that I had taken something from her son. Before we had all sat down, she accused me of keeping Noah away from Daniel and using legal tricks to seize his property. "I have never denied Daniel his scheduled time with Noah," I said, "and I have not seized anything." On the table in front of me were copies of the deed, the Cayenne's title, and the bank statements. I did not open them. This was Daniel's truth to tell. George looked at his son. "You asked us to come. Start talking." Daniel's hands remained clasped between his knees. For several seconds he stared at the carpet. Then he admitted that I had inherited the house before our marriage. He told them I had purchased the Porsche with money from the land my grandmother left me. There had never been a mortgage for him to pay, and neither property had ever belonged to him. Patricia's face changed, but Daniel continued. He admitted telling them he had bought the house. He admitted presenting the Porsche as his anniversary gift to me. He told them I had never invited them to live in the guest suite and had known nothing about his promise. Finally, he explained that some of the money he had sent them came from savings built with both our incomes. George leaned back as if the air had left him. Patricia turned toward Daniel. "You let me say those things to her while you knew the truth." Daniel swallowed. "Yes. Why? Because correcting you would have exposed me." For once, no one rushed to fill the silence. Patricia looked at the papers in front of me. I slid the deed and title across the table. She read my name on both, then set them down without a word. I had imagined this moment during several sleepless nights. In those imaginings, I felt vindicated. Sitting there, I felt only tired. "I'm not here to take Daniel's house from him," I said. "It was never his. I'm here because my son watched his father tell his mother that humiliating me had no consequence." Patricia's eyes filled, but her first attempt at an apology still protected her pride. "I'm sorry if you misunderstood what I meant." "I didn't misunderstand you," I replied. "You said exactly what you meant, and Noah heard it. An apology begins with naming what you did, not questioning how I heard it." George lowered his head. Daniel did not defend her. The counselor asked what I wanted. From the meeting, I said I wanted the lies corrected, the money accounted for, and every adult in the room to understand that Noah would not be used to carry messages or choose sides. Then Daniel looked at me with a fragile kind of hope. Now that everything is out, he asked, "Can we go home and work this out?" I held his gaze. No. Knowing the truth does not erase what happened. The separation continues. The words sounded firm in the counselor's office. Driving back to the hotel, however, I cried at a red light where no one could see me. I had not wanted to defeat Daniel. I had wanted him to stand beside me when his family humiliated me. Now he was living in a furnished apartment. I was preparing to return to a quiet house, and Noah kept asking when we would all eat breakfast together again. Daniel's consequences were real, but they were not cruel. He still had his job, his income, and regular time with his son. What he no longer had was the comfortable image he had built around property that was never his. 2 days after the family meeting, he sent a written message to every relative who had attended George's retirement cookout. He stated plainly that I had owned the house and Porsche before our marriage, that I had contributed substantially to our family, and that he had lied because he was ashamed of feeling less successful than his brother. He also wrote that I had not kept Noah from him. Daniel showed me the message before sending it, but he did not ask me to soften it. He also signed a repayment plan for the money taken from our joint savings. The monthly amount was manageable, and every payment would be documented. Then he began meeting with an individual counselor to confront a habit he had carried for years. Whenever he feared disappointing his mother, he lied, delayed, or allowed someone else to absorb her anger. A week later, Noah and I returned home. His toys were exactly where we had left them. Daniel's coffee mug still sat beside the sink. I put it in a cabinet because I could not bear to see it yet. I could not bring myself to pack it away. That evening, while I tucked Noah into bed, he asked, "Did Daddy leave because Grandma said Mommy was bad?" The question struck deeper than any argument about money. "No," I told him. "Daddy left because the grown-ups need time to make better choices. You did nothing wrong, and Mommy and Daddy both love you." The next day, Daniel and I repeated that message together during a video call. We used simple words and made no promises we could not keep. The following Saturday, Daniel brought Noah home after their afternoon together. While we stood at the front door discussing preschool, Patricia's car pulled into the driveway. She walked toward us without calling first. "I need to see my grandson," she said. "This has gone far enough." I felt Daniel tense beside me. Months earlier, that tension would have become my burden. Clear's throat. This time, he stepped between Patricia and the doorway. "Mom, you don't enter Claire's home unless she invites you." Patricia stared at him. "You're choosing her again." "No," he said. "I'm finally taking responsibility for what I helped you do." She left angry, but Daniel did not chase her or ask me to excuse her behavior. That night, Patricia left me a voicemail. For the first time, her apology did not begin with the word if. Patricia's message was nearly 4 minutes long. "Claire, I humiliated you in front of Noah," she began. "I treated you as though you were living on Daniel's generosity. I screamed at you about a car that was never his, and I helped make your little boy feel unsafe in his own home." Her voice shook, but she did not blame confusion, stress, or anything I had said. "I was wrong. You do not owe me forgiveness. I only wanted to say that clearly." I listened twice. The apology did not repair what had happened, but it was the first time Patricia had spoken about her behavior without reaching for an excuse. Over the next 3 months, Daniel continued to follow the parenting schedule. He arrived on time, paid his share of Noah's expenses, attended counseling, and made every scheduled repayment to our joint savings. He never used Noah to ask when he could come home. Patricia did not call again until she sent me a short message asking whether I would meet her and George in a public place. I agreed to 30 minutes at a quiet park near the library. She looked smaller without an audience around her. George sat beside her on the bench, but he let her speak for herself. Patricia told me that George's retirement had frightened her more than she had admitted. Their savings were thinner than she had believed, and she feared becoming dependent on their children. At the same time, she was afraid Daniel's marriage had reduced her influence over him. His stories about the house, the Porsche, and his success reassured her that she had raised a son who could protect everyone. So I clung to that picture, she said. And when you challenged it, I treated you like the threat. I appreciated her honesty, but I did not let understanding become permission. Fear may explain why you behaved that way, I said. It does not excuse what Noah heard. I know. I told Patricia that any future relationship with my son required clear boundaries. She could not criticize either parent in front of him. Visits had to be arranged in advance. My finances and military service were not subjects for family gossip, and entering my home or spending time with Noah would happen by invitation, not demand. She did not argue. I'll follow your rules, she said. They aren't punishments, I replied. They are the conditions that make a relationship safe. I offered her a gradual path back into Noah's life. Brief, planned visits with no pressure on him and no expectation that I would pretend everything was normal. I was not ready to forgive her, but I was willing to notice changed behavior. That evening, Daniel called after Noah was asleep. My counselor thinks we should meet together, he said. Not so I can talk you into taking me back. I need to understand whether I destroyed something we can't rebuild. I looked around the quiet kitchen where his coffee mug remained hidden in a cabinet. I'll attend, I said, but counseling is not a promise that you're coming home. I understand. For the first time, I believed he might. I agreed to 90 days of marriage counseling with one condition. We are not here to decide how quickly Daniel can move home, I told Dr. Evelyn Carter, our counselor. We are here to learn whether trust can be rebuilt at all. Daniel nodded. Months earlier, he would have argued. Now he listened without defending himself. During our third session, Dr. Carter asked him a simple question. Whose approval were you protecting at the cookout? Daniel looked down at his hands. My mother's. And I protected it at the expense of my wife and my son. Hearing him say it hurt, even though I already knew. He explained that Patricia's disappointment had frightened him since childhood. Whenever she compared him with Mark, he felt like the lesser son. Instead of enduring that feeling honestly, he manufactured success. Each lie gave him temporary relief and demanded another lie. Then Dr. Carter turned to me. What did silence protect for you? I wanted to say it protected our marriage. After a long pause, I answered more honestly. It protected me from conflict. I told myself I was keeping the peace. Really, I was teaching Daniel that I would absorb disrespect to keep everyone else comfortable. That admission did not make me responsible for his lies, but it helped me recognize my own pattern. I could not build a healthier marriage by returning to the same silence. Dr. Carter gave us a distinction I carried home with me. Forgiveness is personal, she said. Access is earned. Trust is evidence gathered over time. So, I watched the evidence. Daniel continued counseling, followed the parenting schedule, and never tried to win me back with gifts. When Patricia had her first short visit with Noah, she arrived 10 minutes early, but waited in her car until the scheduled time. She brought a coloring book, asked permission before photographing him, and left when the visit ended. The change was small enough to seem ordinary. That was precisely why I trusted it more than a dramatic promise. George supported the boundaries too. When Patricia complained once that a 90-minute visit felt cold, he told her, Claire is not making you pay forever. She is asking you to prove you can be safe today. Daniel also changed how he spoke about the property. He never asked to drive the Cayenne or suggested that the house was legally his. In counseling, he admitted that both had become symbols of the success he wanted others to see, instead of the security my grandmother had intended for me. At the end of 90 days, I was not ready for Daniel to return, but I was no longer certain divorce was the only safe choice. We agreed to continue counseling while remaining separated. 6 months after the cookout, Noah's 4th birthday approached. We chose a local park, so the day would belong to him, not to the house. Invitations went to both sides of the family. Then Daniel's sister, Megan, sent him a joke about Claire's property war. Daniel showed me the before answering. I know this is another test, he said. He was right. Soon we would all stand together again, and I would learn whether his changes could survive an audience. The morning of Noah's birthday, I almost canceled the party. A family gathering had started our separation, and I feared another might undo our progress. but Noah had spent weeks talking about cupcakes, balloons, and the playground's really fast slide. He deserved a day untouched by adult shame. Daniel arrived early with folding tables and did not act as though setting them up earned praise. Patricia and George came at the agreed time. Faded, Daniel did not look at me for approval or wait until we were alone to explain himself. He corrected the lie while the same people who had once admired it were listening. Patricia surprised me by adding, "That subject is finished, Megan." It lasted less than a minute, but that minute mattered more than every apology Daniel had given. He had defended the truth when doing so cost him comfort. That was the kind of evidence Dr. Carter meant. By then, Daniel had repaid the $12,000, including my share and our financial records had remained open for months. We had also met separately with attorneys about what would happen if we tried again. Neither lawyer represented both of us, and neither treated reconciliation as a reason to abandon caution. The postnuptial agreement confirmed that the house in Cayenne remained my separate property. It required both of us to approve large gifts to relatives, created transparent household accounts, and protected each spouse from debts the other had not disclosed. It also stated that Noah's needs and parenting time would never be bargaining tools. Daniel signed only after his own lawyer reviewed every page after the party. Daniel and I sat on a bench while Noah chased bubbles with George. I told Daniel that his response to Megan had mattered, because he had not left me to defend reality alone again. Still, I was not ready for him to carry his suitcases back into my house, as though one good afternoon had repaired everything. We agreed on a gradual trial reconciliation. He would join us for dinner twice a week, attend counseling, and spend occasional family days with us while keeping his apartment. We would review the arrangement after 2 months according to how safe and honest our home felt, not how badly either of us wanted the old life back. Daniel looked across the park at Noah, then back at me. "If I come home someday, can we build something that belongs to both of us even if the house never does?" I understood he was no longer asking for ownership. He was asking whether honesty, shared choices, and daily responsibility could create a home no deed could guarantee. "Maybe," I said, "but we build it slowly and we build it truthfully." 1 year after George's retirement cookout, we gathered again in my backyard. This time there were no speeches about who provided the house and no quiet struggle over who held authority. There was only grilled chicken, Noah's laughter, and a folding table covered with dishes everyone had helped prepare. Daniel had moved home 3 months earlier after our trial reconciliation had grown from 2 dinners a week into a steady family routine. He kept his apartment until both Dr. Carter and I believed the change was durable. Even after returning, he continued individual and marriage counseling. Trust did not reappear when his suitcase crossed the doorway. It returned in small, repeated choices. He asked before making large purchases. He showed me financial statements without being reminded. When Patricia disagreed with a boundary, he spoke to her himself instead of asking me to endure her displeasure. None of those actions were dramatic enough for a movie. They were strong enough for a marriage. Patricia arrived that afternoon and waited at the gate until I invited her in. She asked before making plans with Noah and never again suggested that Daniel was the only person supporting our family. Our relationship was not intimate, and I did not pretend the hurt had vanished, but it had become respectful, honest, and safe. At one point, Noah climbed onto my lap and asked whether Grandma knew whose house it was now. "She knows," I told him. "But more importantly, she knows this is your home and everyone here must treat one another kindly." The house and Porsche were still mine. That was not my victory. My victory was refusing to teach my son that keeping a family together requires one person to accept humiliation. Daniel's victory was learning that love did not give him permission to hide behind a lie. Patricia's was discovering that an apology becomes meaningful only when changed behavior follows it. I also understood that reconciliation was not the same as returning to the marriage we had before. That marriage had been built around avoidance. What we were creating now required harder conversations, clearer boundaries, and the humility to admit when either of us was wrong. The legal protections mattered. Separate property records, independent lawyers, documented repayments, transparent accounts, and a written parenting schedule kept fear from turning into chaos. But no deed, contract, or bank statement repaired our family. Only truth, accountability, and consistent action could do that. Before dessert, Daniel stood beside me while Noah carried napkins to the table. He did not call the house his, mine, or ours. He simply said, "I'm grateful to be home." This time the word home sounded like responsibility, not ownership. My son did not learn that the loudest person owns the house. He learned that love means telling the truth, respecting boundaries, and earning your way back after you have broken someone's trust. Please subscribe and join me for the next story.